And now, live from Portland Community Media, Studio B, Outside the Box with your host, Alex Ansary, and special guest, Micheal Sunanda. And here's your host, Alex Ansary.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another edition of Outside the Box. August 15th, 2010. Tonight is a perfect segue to last week's show. We talked about solar flare sun cycles, them potentially being tied to cycles of war. We went over that report by Dr. Burl Payne. Tonight we go even deeper down the rabbit hole, even deeper outside the box with our very special guest, Micheal Sunanda from Eugene, 2012. Energy geometry, permaculture, and eco-astrology. We'll also talk about some other things. But before we get to Micheal in about 10 minutes' time, major developments since last week. Now, for those of you that tuned in, we talked about major changes in the Earth's magnetic field, the thermosphere, the outermost layer of our Earth's atmosphere. We talked about solar flares, a number of them, 4 of them in fact, that were detected emanating from the sun on August 1st, 2010, hitting the Earth between the 3rd and the 4th. And as I said, watch for earthquakes, flooding, things of that nature over the course of the next 7 days. We do have some news tonight pertaining to fires in Russia and also flooding in China and flooding in Pakistan. So let's start from the top. We have some new information on solar activity from spaceweather.com. On August 14th, yesterday, about 10:05 Universal Time, magnetic fields connecting sunspot 1093 and 1099 erupted, producing a 2-sunspot solar flare, C4 class, and hurling a huge blob of plasma into space. The CME of August 14th might deliver a glancing blow to our magnetic field on the 17th. That's 2 days away. The last several years, we've also seen an increase in reports and studies linking high-power solar flares to blackouts and the potential for a full-on grid meltdown. Therefore, it's likely that the latest increase in solar activity is linked to the following report. I mentioned last week to look at some of these potentials for earthquakes. And the next slide here, graphic number 19, we see an increase in earthquake activity across the globe. Here's a short list. We've seen a 6.6 in the Mariana Islands, several earthquakes there. We saw a 7.1 in Ecuador on August 12, 2010. We also saw an earthquake in Wyoming, 4.8, and that was on August 5th, 2010. We also saw a magnitude earthquake in New Guinea, August 4th, 2010. Bill, go to the next slide. And this is a short list, and if you look online, well, I might have left that graphic out, you can see where the earthquakes and volcanic eruptions are taking place. U.S. electricity blackouts are skyrocketing. Over the course of last year, we've seen more articles linking potential for grid meltdown to solar activity, solar flares, interacting with our weakening Earth's magnetic field, and we are now seeing reports of more blackouts throughout the country. Heat smog alerts issued for the Portland area. This is also in the news. Yes, it's very hot out right now, and this is in relation to the increase in solar temperatures. It is impacting our planet right down here on Earth. Now, in addition to these reports that I have right here, we've got several others pertaining to Russia. Fires continue to rage and burn outside and around Moscow. This picture is from NASA. It highlights about 366 active fires in that region. It's burning for weeks now and has killed about 700 people thus so far. The fires have been described as the greatest, the most intense in over 1,000 years in this region of Russia. And so this is correlated with the increase in solar activity, solar flares from not only C-class flares, but M-class flares as well. Bill, let's go ahead and roll track 1, first of all, in the DVD player. And this is what the solar flare activity looked like from just several days ago. The CME that was detected coming out of the sun on August 14th, 2010. So we'll look at this for a few minutes, return, and then talk about the fires in Russia. And so things are going to be very interesting with our guest tonight, Micheal, to get his take on natural Earth cycles, energy geometry, and many other things that he's been studying for multiple decades. And, of course, the need for us to return to a permaculture-like society so we can be self-sufficient and not dependent on the grocery stores for our food being trucked in using fossil fuels into our major cities. If you want to talk about solutions to some of these challenges that we face, I think we need to look towards ourselves, not the government, and what it really means to be self-sufficient in a world where they say we need a certain amount of GDP growth every year just to survive. It's completely absurd, but look at these natural cycles that we're going through and think about how our world is going to change as we know it. Not the end of the world, but a true transformation into something anew. In the next track, Bill, let's take a look at those fires raging in Russia. This is from Al Jazeera English.
Volunteers combating the fires in Russia are surrounded by flames as they try to escape the blaze. Their panicked voices blast out a series of expletives throughout the video as they try to decide which way to turn and drive as the flames close in. At one point they stop and look around as their attempt at escape becomes increasingly desperate. The 4 unidentified men from the town of Viska had gone to help local residents protect their homes from the blaze. They were armed with only spades and water in a region that has already lost a number of homes and farmland. At one point, the driver tells the passengers that he can't see anything as he continues through the thick smoke. 34 people have already died in the fires in Russia, with 1,500 homes burnt down across an area of more than 300,000 acres. For these men, it seems like there's no escape as the fire keeps on going and going. The speed of the flames meant they were finding it difficult to outrun it and reach a safe zone. But fortunately, they managed to follow another car out through the hellish atmosphere and back to safety.
All right, we'll keep playing it and look at the next clip, highlighting the situation in Moscow.
The latest aerial footage from Pakistan showing what's being called the flood of the century.
We don't have that additional
search
clip
and rescue effort
from Moscow, but again, we are short on time. So let me give you a couple other updates on the situation in Russia. So in addition to the fact that the fires have been raging for weeks now, killing nearly 1,000, we see Russia combating wildfires in the Chernobyl radiation zone. And those of you who know about the situation in 1986, where that area was quarantined, that area is now under fire. What does that mean for the people in Moscow? Poisonous smog is returning to that city, and people are breathing the toxic fumes from this nuclear fallout zone, radiation zone. Now, from the situation in Russia, from the drought, we're looking at the global food supply here. Russia loses quarter of crops in the drought. And so, as a result, a grain ban has taken effect. So a lot of speculators on Wall Street are putting their money into wheat. That's just going to further drive the cost up. We should be eating healthier things than wheat, though, and things of that nature. So hopefully people will transition their diet to something more healthier. And I know Michael has some thoughts about that. We aren't really eating what we ought to be eating. However, this is going to send shockwaves throughout the land. Meat prices set to jump after wheat crop failures. And the next headline, wheat is the new gold in time of plenty for America's breadbasket. I do want to mention briefly that there is some sort of a anomaly that scientists have detected when it comes to the situation in Pakistan. We'll show the video in a moment. And, of course, the fires that are raging in China. This is from the UK Daily Mail. Blocked jet stream to blame for freak weather in Russia and Pakistan, according to scientists. And this is, I'm sure, going to lead a lot of people to believe that HAARP could be involved in this. A massive heat wave in Russia and the current devastating floods in Pakistan could be linked by the unusual behavior of the jet stream. The jet stream is the high-altitude wind that circles the globe from west to east and normally pushes a series of wet but mild Atlantic lows across Britain. But meteorologists who study the phenomenon say that it is producing unusual holding patterns, which keep weather systems in place and produce freak conditions. Bill, let's get now that clip ready for Pakistan. 20 million are now homeless in what is being described as the worst flooding in hundreds of years. Let's go ahead and show the footage from that, also from Al Jazeera English.
Continuing in a country where the death toll has now climbed to over 1,400. Aid agencies say entire villages have been washed away and some 3 million people affected.